Hey guys, welcome back to Digital Sniper. And before we start with today's video, like always, let's start with the package. I actually have another card that came in the mail the other day, but I forgot to make a video about it, and I just didn't really get the time to um, come up with something. And so, anyways, I'll include this card in today's video after I open today's package. So, now I haven't been buying a lot of cards lately. I promised myself that I have to kind of streamline the buying process a little bit. I'm kind of going crazy buying Desert Shield cards in the last couple of months, and sometimes you just got to slow things down and make sure you're not just buying every single great eye appeal card you see. Otherwise, it could be trouble. So this is one of them, actually. I saw someone post this card on the Facebook Desert Shield Facebook group, and I thought, well, there's one on eBay, so let's get a copy. And I think the copy that was uploaded on Facebook was a 9, PSA 9, and I found a 10. So this is the, or maybe it was a 10, actually. I may be wrong. But this is a pretty good copy, I must say. It's an older label, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. This is actually something I want to talk about today, but this is the Mark Neufeld PSA 10. So this is a rookie card. Um, not a not a rare or demanding card, but this is a very nice copy. Okay, so well centered. The borders are very very white. So I do have some Desert Shield cards where the borders are starting to yellow, and I actually bought them like that. It's not like I kept them in the sun or in bright light. So and it's hard to avoid this if you're buying cards like me on eBay, because I'm not saying the sellers will tweak the cards so it looks white, but sometimes it's maybe just the camera's white balance, or whatever program they run these photos through, and they may do some auto tweaking, and so you don't really see the yellow borders. But anyways, so with this Mark Neufeld, um, the card's very clean. Back centering looks really good, and so this is one of these cards where I don't mind, even though it's an older label, I don't mind paying a bit more. Like normally, a player like Mark Neufeld, um, you know, PSA 10, I don't think I'd pay more than like $70, $80 on eBay for it. Now, this is already accounting for the eBay premium, but in this case, I paid a little bit more for it, which, it's all right. So now, on to my next card. Let's see if I have the stand here. I think I left. Oh, well, okay. So this card came in about a week ago, maybe. Um, and it's a card where I I have a copy of it raw, but I've never really gotten to buying a PSA 10 until now. Now, the reason why, it's because, first of all, like I've mentioned before, I'm always looking for really good eye appeal. And with the Winfield, it's, first of all, the 10s don't pop up that much, but when they do, especially with the older labels, and I've mentioned this before, there are a lot of centering issues, or that there's a lot of like this bottom cracking or chipping. And so, I haven't really come across one that I really like. And this Winfield is pretty good. I mean, the back center is a tad bit off, but, um, you know, probably one of the better ones. But the front centering is pretty good. I'd say this is, PSA 10 quality, just like this Newfield here. Now, these two cards actually, um, this is something I want to talk about today, and why certain PSA 10s, at least in my opinion, are worth more than others. Okay. And I've kind of come across talking about this in previous videos. But I just want to talk more about, the issues that I've seen with PSA 10s, especially with the older PSA 10s. And then I'm actually seeing some reoccurrence with these issues with the new PSA grading standards too, because I don't know. First of all, we do know, well, at least we do assume that the grading is a bit stricter now with PSA, but I do still see some 9-figure certs, PSA 10s, where the cards are still off center. So, which I would assume that, with the new grading standards, that this should not really occur with these newer grades. So I don't know what PSA is doing. If anyone has any idea, please let me know. But let's talk about why certain PSA 10s deserve like a higher premium, at least in my opinion. And feel free to tell me what you think and whether or not you agree or disagree. Not that I would like to start an argument or debate, but I'd love to hear what you think, especially if you have a different opinion. Well, first things for me is the centering. Okay, so with the older cards in the older labels, we'll see a lot of the PSA 10s where I would say the centering's um, a bit more off than 60/40. Okay, so for me, that's definitely a turnoff, and I usually skip acquiring those cards, and that's why with the Dave Winfield it took me so long. In fact, I have a raw Winfield where the centering is pretty dead on. I'm not sure if it would grade a 9 or 10, but it looked, at least eye appeal wise, it looked a lot better than some of the previous 10s I saw on eBay. So apart from that, is what I mentioned is the yellowing of the borders, or it's to be honest, it's not just the border. Usually, if you see it on the border, it's probably the whole registration has kind of yellowed. But of course, it's harder to tell due to the fact that with the photo, it could also be a tad bit of the white balance or the time of day that the shot was taken. But obviously, if the border is starting to yellow, it's most likely your card or the registration of the card has yellowed as well. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is the chipping. Okay, we mentioned that also as well, and sometimes with the 10s, I've noticed the chippings. It's quite obvious, and you can see it with the naked eye. And you don't even need a magnifying glass to look through it. But anyways, so that occurs quite a bit with Desert Shield cards because we all know that for some reason the bottom edge suffers a lot from chipping. And with the older slabs, you'll see a lot of the 10s getting passed for a 10 with serious chipping issues. So that's something that I think that sometimes when you zoom in the listing, you are able to see whether or not the 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 card has a chipping issue. So that's something that you can avoid. Okay. Now, the other thing is, apart from the front centering, is the back centering. Okay. So I've seen a lot of 10s where the back centering is just a bit too off for my taste. And now, depending on what card, okay, because some 10s are really, really hard to come by. Okay. Let me give you an example. Um, for example, the Bob Welch All-Star card is very hard to come by. Not only a 10, but a 9 is very hard to come by, at least online. I'm not sure if you'll find more of these cards at trade shows, but I doubt it because, to be honest, Desert Shield cards aren't that available at trade shows, from what I hear, and at least in my part of the world, they don't exist. But I know they are available in a lot of the bigger shows. But with that said, though, these harder to come by tens, a lot of the collectors that buy them, they're not flippers or not traders. And so once they acquire these cards, you don't see them in the market that often. Okay, so yeah, so if you come across a card like that with the back center slightly off, obviously you're going to take it because it's not FOMO, but it's the fact that some of these cards, the tens never show up online, and it may be another like 2 3 years or even more before you see another 10. Okay, there's a few cards in this set that's like that. Okay, but if it's not one of these cards and these cards have a back centering issue, that's to me is something that I would avoid. Okay. Now, I'm not going to talk about like registration issues because I do think even back in the day, if the card had registration issues or surface issues, it's less likely that they'll get a 10. Okay. Back then, stuff like that was kind of it's stuff that was very easy to spot. Apart from centering, of course, because back then centering wasn't as as important. I think back in the '90s or the early 2000s, but I think registration of surface issues was something that was easily spotted by PSA, and I've often found that even with the older labels, that majority of the tens had pretty good surface and registration issues. So what else? The corner dings, I think, is less likely once again because when I was a kid, dings were something that we looked at immediately when we were trading cards or buying cards, and I don't think while I've mentioned in previous videos where I've seen a lot of tens where either they had like a minor soft corner or the fact that you could see like a white corner showing, revealing in the back. Um, I think that doesn't really happen as much. Okay. Maybe with a lot more with the nines, but not with the tens. But I could be wrong, and if you have any examples, feel free to show me. Okay. Now, and that's why there's a lot of tens, like especially with the base commons, where I I don't mind paying a premium for it as long as the eye appeal looks good. And when you're buying and collecting these cards, you got to think like the customer or the collector. Okay, and I think majority of even regardless of whether or not you're a collector or a flipper or reseller, whatever, um, most people will be very picky about the not just the condition but the characteristics of the card, right? Because if the characteristics of the card fits everything that I've mentioned so far, the centering, the chipping issues, surface issues, or maybe even the stamp, whether it's understamped, overstamped, etc., and the back centering, etc. Um, well, it will be a lot more easier to sell. Okay, you'll find that to be the case, especially you know, um, especially with cards that are hard to come by. So definitely, when it comes to like a PSA 10, I mentioned in a previous video where I'm not really that picky about old labels or the newer labels or even the newer cert numbers because as long as the card looks good, I can always relabel the card if it's a really high dollar card, and it will be a new label. Of course, you'll still keep the card will still keep the original cert number, but you'll have a newer label. And for some reason, people think that with the newer labels, the card is automatically uh, was graded with much stricter guidelines. But of course, it's the same card. So I think the thing is, with your collection, it's most important that you you have a closer look at the card and whether or not that eye appeal appeals to you. I mean, if you don't mind an off-centered card, you'll most likely have a lot of cards to choose from. But if you're like me, where the chipping and um, the centering of the card, the back centering of the card, and some people even collect the different, whether it's a gold shield or a silver shield. I'm not really into that. I'm just happy if the shield looks good. I don't really care what color the shield um, is, and so but the thing is, for me, it's definitely centering. So that's why it's a lot harder for me to come by these PSA 10s, and when I do, um, I'll overpay because I don't want to spend another 2 years looking for another Dave Winfield. Now, I want to, while we're on the topic of Dave Winfield, let's, this guy, he was definitely a really good player. And I believe he's also a very good football player too, but I may be wrong. I think I heard that somewhere. But, um, even near the end of his MLB career, he was a very, very reliable player. And of course, he helped the Blue Jays win the World Series and, just a great designated hitter. I don't know why his cards, hasn't gone up in value. Okay, Hall of Famer, and to be honest, his rookie cards aren't cheap neither. So I do think the Desert Shield Dave Winfield PSA 10s are slightly undervalued. So for you investors out there that are looking for, Hall of Fame card that's investment worthy, be on the lookout for the Dave Winfield PSA 10. I do think that there's a lot of room for this card to go up. Because if you're lucky, you can still find PSA 10s for like $200 to $300. Okay, $200-300, yeah. So, which I think is a steal for a Hall of Famer of his caliber. So, yeah, be on the lookout for Dave Winfield. That's all I want to talk about today because, someone asked me why I would overpay for some of the base commons. And, obviously, for an investment point of view, it's not that smart. But as a collector, I want my cards to look good, and it's not always about reselling. Like, honestly, I don't think I'll be reselling a Mark Newfield anytime soon. But the fact that if I bought a PSA 10 of the Mark Newfield and it was off center, it would have been kind of an eyesore for me for the next couple of years, that I'll be holding on to this card. And it may be a lot longer than what I just mentioned. It may be till like I die because I don't think I'll be selling this card. Not that I want to keep this card badly, but this isn't one of those cards where you're buying to resell. It's. I'm just buying this card to add it to my PC. So yeah. So if I'm buying for my PC, I am going to be extra picky on how it looks because I want it to look good. And honestly, let's say this card, I do see one on PropScene right now for like $79. So it's about what, $50 less than what I paid for. In about 10, 20 years time, $50 is nothing for Desert Shield cards. So sometimes when you overpay for a card that you really like, think about that, okay? Because I remember like about 5 years ago, you can probably get like a PSA 10 Roger Clemens for less than $200. Good luck with that now. And if you overpaid by like $50 back then, it may have been a lot of money, considering card value, but it's nothing today. So don't worry about overpaying. Do worry about whether or not you have the card that you really want in terms of the eye appeal. Okay, that's just my suggestion, and that's also the reason why some tens are worth more than others. Now, that's it for today. I thought I was going to keep it short. Sorry, it's about a little longer than I expected. Anyhow, please like and subscribe my videos, and let me know what you think. Do you agree with what I said today? If not, please feel free to disagree. I'd love to hear what you think, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye now.